That means the one user has one to many roles. So it has one to many roles. Okay, one registration user has a main one that all the informations is a username, first name, username, and password, and phone number, mobile numbers, and it has a or independent one-to-one related user detail user profile information. That means more detailed information one-to-one, depending how you design your schemas or your database. Then exactly this is one of the way of doing how you define all the user related information into the one single tables, and put the user profile information, like maybe there is need a lot of documents to need to be saved, or the address information to other tables. That's the reason I put it like this, that way. Maybe you can have different idea to design it in a different way. So we have a auditing that's I already explained. So it has some implementation. They extend the auditing, the JPA Spring Boot JPA auditing objects. They extend the object auditing models, and it has a models auto generated when one data is inserted, and it's automatically insert or update, and automatically date the timestamp of those entries or these records. So I just simply use it, and then it's working. So you see the data to string methods there, and then mapped superclass entity listeners, and then join ignore the join properties, and then abstract class, and then this class be extended to my main class, the main parent class. So it's extended, implement a serializer interface, and so on. So and then now down level standard getter and setters. If you use the lambda, you don't need to be put it the getter and setter. It's just simply just addition information. So if you don't put it the lambda expression lambbook, then annotations, then you need to be set manually the your getter and setters. That's all the possibility you can do. So that means we define our models, and we also define our relationships, our mappings between the how it is maps, how the foreign key, primary key related. As if you look for the backend server, the backend database, and here, so you see there's a registration tables. That's we have the main tables, and then main tables has a foreign key with the link with the user profiles, and then also it has a link with the user registration also. So if you go the user role tables, you see the user role and user registration primary keys for references with the user registration file, user registration as a foreign key into the user registration role tables. So if I go to the tables, you can see the tables user profiles that is linked with the user registrations. And then what we can go, how it is linked. If you see the link between let's see the user registration, this is empty, and it has a primary key, nothing more special. If I go to the user role, that means the one user has many roles. So you can go to the roles, you see the one user ID, if it has a one specific ID, and do the user role registration code. So we will do the test with the Postman, how it is works. Then I will show you. Let's continue the implementation part. So that means you define your control your models, and now you define your repository. So it's really professional ways to structure the applications. That's the. But sometimes some fresher and beginners, when they are facing the interview, they're asking what is the standard project structure, how the module, the package structure, can you write down it? So this is, I say, this is a professional way to do. So models we define, so all the models here within all the respective repository. So we define the very simple, they extend the paging and sorting repository. We define the repository, and also we define the roles repository on additional some repository interfaces in here. So find by user registration ID, find by user registration user role ID, and so on and so forth. So we can define this simply more interfaces into the URL. If you require something, the created query language, you can use also JPQL query languages with the query annotation. That's I said I will show you later part how can you write down your complex queries to do the complex search engine, or to do the complex search functionality with the pagination and sorting functionalities. But here is the standard how we can define the models, how can you define the repositories. So it's exactly the same thing is here. So we use the paging sorting repositories, and then also we have some you already know the JPA repository, and there's some CRUD repository, you can also use it. But for the paging sorting repository, there is a functionality is there, just you simply use it and use the paging sorting functionality into the your REST APIs. So we define the repository, and after the definition of the repository, we define the service interface. This is the most important service interface. We define the user registration service interface. That's what we need to do the CRUD operation. We have create, update, delete, and then get all. So CRUD operation, simply very CRUD operations functionalities. We define the interfaces, and then because this is our customized interface, how we can do it. And then we define our the user role interfaces. The more, not the CRUD repository, there is more such functionalities with defining some function of defining some default or defined query languages like the attribute names. So you see the get all user by user registration ID, get all user by content, and get user by user role, and so on and so forth. That's really perfect of what we expected. And even the same definition, we have interface, nothing more there. So interface definitions, we didn't do it yet, but exactly the same pictures will have to be do here like that way. So we defined our own interface, the repository interface. Then we define the and then we need to implement our interface, our definition of interface. That's you need to be understand. That's I said, it is really a professional way to do. Just follow exactly what I am doing here. So we have interface definition. Now we have implement those interfaces. So let's open the interfaces to extend our interface. That's we define here all the functionalities. We implement the class here, then the annotated service. And those who are the new for the Spring Boot annotations, please look for my channels. There is a clear definition about all prospective annotations. So this is the service annotation, is a business logic there. So we call our auto-aware annotation to inject our repository. So what we defined here, the paging and sorting repository. That's I mean. Paging sorting repository where we are here. So we define the repository, and then we implement all the interfaces what we define here. So the paging repository, find all, call find all repository, and then find all repository with the paginable, and then we have save functions to create with the here is the find all and get only the content part, even though without paging and sorting repository with the some additional information of this part is only containing the content of your object model, the user registration objects. But that I will show you in the test when I did the Postman test. So we just implement, and this is the update functions and properly working, and this is the delete functions. We pass the user registration ID on find by user registration ID with calling the repository, and the map to it and delete it and give the exceptions. And here is the settings of the user registrations. You can set also the set functions, set the user registration, you can also call it, no problems at all. To how we define it, just very standard, very small small functional programming skills you need to implement these things. So exactly the same thing, we define the user registration interface, implement the interface. For this case, we need the both in repositories. We need the user role repository because this is the user has a link with the user role, because one user has multiple roles. That's why we need to be search, we need to be get, we need to be update, we need to be create based on the user role and user ID, and with the respective user role definitions. And that's why we need to this to class. That's why I said this is really a professional way to how can you call different repositories, build your own services, your service definition. How can you build your own business logic? That's I mean that is created. So it's a find all, the find all cases, and so you see the find all case. So it's very simple. We are looking for all the user roles. That's with the pageable functionalities, and even though we are find all with the page on the content of all the users, and then we find